You do not have to be a good skiller to be a great dribbler. Big Feds here with an updated guide on how to dribble like a top 1% player, no matter the meta. As the other videos, the reason I've remade this one is in the description below. I wish I was a good skiller. I think skill moves are a great way to become a better player. The reason I mentioned you don't have to be a good skiller is because a very common question I see is, I'm not a good dribbler. What skills do I need to learn? I'm not a good skiller, but I would say I'm a great dribbler. Dribbling does not mean you have to beat your opponent. It's about finding space and how to exploit that without passing. Sometimes that means your opponent is in that space. Dribbling is a way to draw him in so you can exploit the gap he leaves behind. Finding space and drawing in defenders can be done in many different ways. In this guide, I'll be giving you some simple tricks and techniques that will put you in favorable positions to do it successfully. All of the examples in this video are taken straight out of my stream to show you that they are applicable online and against high-level players. Now, EAFC has introduced a lot of new mechanics when it comes to dribbling. I'll give you a quick summary of all the ways to dribble. You got left stick dribbling, which is normal left stick dribbling. You've got strafe dribbling, which is close controlled dribbling that has the ball as a focus point while facing the opponent's goal no matter how you move. You've got agile dribbling, which is fluid movement with the player as a focus point. The player goes and the ball follows. You got slow dribble, as it sounds. It's slower but more controlled. It's very useful in turning around quickly and in tight spaces. You got the new effort dribble, which lets you quickly knock the ball to set up any following decisions. It's crazy good when you have momentum and want to keep that momentum with your touch. You've got the new orbit dribbling, which moves the player around without touching the ball. I haven't really found a use for it yet. And lastly, you've got the controlled sprint. The speed you dribble in is faster than a normal jog, but it's slower than a sprint. The main difference here is that your player takes more touches and keeps the ball closer. This is incredibly useful in the final third. The ones I use is the L1 strafe dribbling and R1 controlled sprint. L1 is almost used everywhere. I use it when I take my first touch to help me set up for another one. I use it to sidestep quickly when I'm trying to challenge a defender. It's a general core of my dribbling. While you could use it wherever you want, these are the main three situations I look to specifically use the controlled sprint. When my player is in his stride and I want to make a slight turn while still keeping momentum, I use the controlled sprint. When I pass it to someone that is in a straight 1v1 versus the defender, I'll use controlled sprint as well. It allows me to challenge him while keeping momentum and forcing my opponent to make a decision. And lastly, I use it when I am in a position where I've got many options, but my opponent isn't pressing me, to allow me to make a quick decision when an opportunity arises. The common thing is that I like to use it close to my opponent's box. Your first touch is what determines what you can do after you receive the ball. It sets you up for any following decisions. You should always look to take your first touch into space. Anytime you turn to where there's a defender, you're giving the defender a chance to challenge for the ball. Taking it into space removes that entirely. Now, sometimes there's no space for you to move into. An easy solution is to move towards where the ball was coming from. And if you're completely surrounded, a quick pass back is always better than trying to turn and losing the ball for no reason. This is a very common mistake I see. You dribble past an opponent, then get stuck not knowing what to do or slow down for some reason, which in turn invites the defender back and makes the earlier dribble useless. A reoccurring theme in my guides is purpose, and the same applies to dribbling. The purpose of challenging an opponent is to get by the defender and exploit the space that is behind. And the time to do that isn't long. It's better to start over and look for an opportunity where you have a clear idea on how to proceed, rather than beating an opponent, getting stuck, and giving away the ball for no reason. You're the one in charge of when an offensive action happens while dribbling. As long as you don't challenge the defender, you can scan the pitch and look around freely when you have the ball. The important things to look for are, where are your teammates, where are your opponents, and where is the space you want to use. Now, if the defender rushes you, he's the one challenging, not you. This means he's giving up the space that you want to draw him out of. You just have to find a way to take advantage of it. Without a doubt, the biggest mistake made when dribbling is not knowing where to dribble. The ball is always going to be faster than your players. So taking this into account, you should dribble into a space where there's no teammates. If there is a teammate there, you're better off passing it. Whenever you're dribbling into your own teammates, you're actively making the pitch smaller and making it easier for your opponent to press, seeing as you remove one of your own players from being playable. I want to highlight the importance of knowing where to dribble. So I'm going to show you two examples. In this first example, as soon as Liao gets the ball, we look for the space where there's no teammates, and that's backwards. That means if we want to dribble, that's where we want to go. And this is a good thing, because if our opponent presses, that means we've moved him away and pulled his defense out of shape, which allows us to use the space that opens up. In this scenario, our opponent decides to move up, and we've now broken the shape of his defense. We release the ball to Patri and make Liao go for a run. This is very important. We do not look to dribble into that space with Patri, because Liao is already moving to occupy it. So we've got two options here. If our opponent decides to follow the run, we just move down in the space that opens up and look for a shot or a pass. If he decides to challenge Patri, we look to dribble only to open up an angle so we can release the ball to Liao that is moving into the space that the defender has vacated. In this example, when the ball is in the air, we scan the pitch to look for potential passes and potential dribbling options. We notice that the space where there's no teammate is diagonally from where Frimpong takes the ball. So if you want to dribble, that is where we want to go. As soon as we notice that one of our players is moving into the same space, we set up for two options. One is playing the ball to the guy that has moved into the space and is making a run. And the second option is to dribble into the space he's now opened up if our opponent decides to follow the run. Seeing as our opponent is a little bit late to follow the run, we decide that the pass is the best option, and we're able to create a good attack out of this. In my attacking guide, I mentioned you can move your opponent by moving your own players. You can use this to create space for yourself to dribble into. If you see one of your players making a run and your opponent decides to follow, you can dribble into the space that has now opened up as a result. In this example, when Liao gets the ball, we make Benzema go for a run in the space between the two center backs, and we make Grimaldo go for a run in the space outside of the wing back. This has given me two passing options, and if my opponent decides to follow these runs, I've created space for Liao to dribble into instead. Only thing I have to do is pay attention to what my opponent does. My opponent decides to take his wing back and cover the pass to Grimaldo, which means he's opened up space between him and the center back, which allows me to just run through it with Liao. By making my players go for a run, I've created space for Liao to dribble into, and we're able to score out of this. To increase the chance of getting past your opponent, you want to put yourself in positions that favor you. No matter what kind of technique you use, understanding what about it makes you beat your opponent will help you know when to use it. Don't force a dribble or skill just because it usually works. I'll give some examples of techniques I use to beat opponents and explain what I look for before I use them. The fake turn or the Herrera spin is one of my favorite things to use. You take a small touch towards one side and then you move quickly around to the other side. The small and subtle movement is almost always enough to fool the defender. You can do it in two ways. The first one is to press L1 plus R1 and moving the left stick in the same direction the ball is coming from, which will make the player fake the turn and then move to the other side. Other way to do it is without any inputs, just normal left stick movement. You push the joystick towards the opposite side of where the ball is coming from, and then you move it in a circular motion back to the original location. And no matter what way you decide to do it, they are very effective. It's useful to relieve pressure almost anywhere on the pitch. You've got the ball roll, which is useful in many situations. I personally use it a lot in 1v1s against the goalkeeper, or to open up space for a pass or a shot. Going from straight dribbling into sprint gives an unexpected burst of speed that can get you past your opponent and open up space for a shot or a pass. It's useful almost anywhere on the pitch. And the concept is very simple. By slowing down, your opponent is anticipating any of your movement in that same speed. So when you sprint, you're always going to be slightly ahead of him. This works both ways though. Change of pace, you're going from fast to slow. This can also confuse the opponent. Easiest way to do it is to move up while sprinting or moving normally. And then if the defender is coming at you with speed, you press straight dribbling to slow down and have him run past, and then you continue. The one time I look to use the ball roll scoop is when my opponent is running closely to me. You're creating the space you want to use with the scoop turn when you use the ball roll. And lastly, when it comes to dribbling, there's no need to rush if you have more than one option. You want to keep as many options open as long as possible. This forces the defender to make a decision on one of the options, which allows you to play one of the other ones uncontested. This is especially true if you outnumber your opponents. I would strongly recommend starting with taking your touch into space, and then you move on to looking for a purpose with your dribbles, because no matter what technique you use, if you don't really know what you're trying to achieve, the techniques themselves won't really help. Dribbling is all about reading, not playing your opponent while manipulating space. Being able to switch it up from dribbling to passing makes you a very good attacker and incredibly hard to defend against. While this is how I look to dribble and the techniques I use, keep in mind that dribbling can be done in many different ways. And the most important thing is that you're going for a style that suits you and you're comfortable with. Anything that's adapted to the way you play will always be better than anything being forced into how you play because it's meta. But that's all I had for this guide. If you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment. I'll do my best to answer. I do stream my games on Twitch, or you can check me out on any social media platform if you want to keep in touch outside of the videos. But until next time, I hope this is helpful and have a good day.